Hi everyone and welcome to this portrait painting tutorial where I explain in 7 steps how I paint a portrait. And first of all, here is what you need. A white canvas, preferably in cotton and portrait quality. When you go to the art supply store, there are many canvas fabrics which are rough, and I prefer those who are very fine because they are perfect for painting portraits. My favorite set of brushes are Tosh brushes. Check out my artist haul video to see exactly how they look and where you get them. Also thin watercolor brushes for the details. You will need an odorless mineral spirit. My favorite one is GAMSOL from Gamblin. Also I use an oil paint medium which is LIQUIN original from Windsor Newton. And of course oil paint. I use oil paint from Schmincke Norma and Rembrandt. And you need of course your reference photo, which is in my case Trish Baby from Instagram. I found this account recently and I was totally fascinated by the range of amazing photos she did. So if you want to look at her account, I have her linked in the description box below. I also didn't just copy one photo, I did a mock-up in Photoshop before, like changing the background and the picture, like adding those cute wolf ears and adjusting the colors. I have also all materials down in the description box so that you can Google them and purchase them where you want. Step number 1. Establish the underdrawing. This part is very important and I start right away. I look at my reference photo and I choose a color that fits to the painting, and most of the times this is a color that is also my favorite, so pink or purple or turquoise, and then I start drawing onto the canvas. For the underdrawing I use a lot of LIQUIN original and GAMSOL. I avoid using thick oil paint because we are going to paint over the underdrawing and we don't want to have mixed it with our new oil paint that we will place over it. Also we will use a lot of LIQUIN original, which is the oil paint medium and which helps to let your oil paint dry faster so that you can continue on your oil painting the next day or 2 days, depending on how much LIQUIN you used in the first place. What I do to place my underdrawing right in the canvas is that I check my reference photo and make little marks on the canvas where, for example, the edge of her head is, or the shoulders, or where approximately the head is placed in the picture. It doesn't have to be perfect. The most important thing is that you get the face right. Hair and things like clothing don't have to be completely perfect. Step 2. Lay out the background. I do the background directly after the underdrawing. Optional, you can also fill out the hair because it looks always nice if you have a soft edge between things in the foreground like the hair and the background. This conveys the illusion of depth and make your painting more realistically. The background also don't have to be perfect in the first layer. It is important that you get the colors right and most of the shapes, but the focal point of the painting is a portrait, so the background is really just the background and should stay there, so no strong colors. I chose a pastel palette for this one and the roses are more blurry like rather than realistic depictions. Step 3. One of the most difficult steps. Fill out the blacks in the face and work against them with whites and all mixed light tones. And by that I mean that you start with the darker parts of the face, like her iris, all the shadows, the area of the face that is in the shadows. You work from them, and when you see that you have done a shape wrong, you use white color or just the right tone of the skin and you work against the shape until it is right. And you do that until everything looks approximately like the reference photo. It doesn't have to be perfect. What is important that you don't use too much oil paint so that your oil paint can dry for 1 or 2 days. I use half oil paint and half LIQUIN, and I'm pushing the paint around until the face looks approximately like my reference picture. In this step, I don't pay too much attention to the lightness. It is important that you get the color values right, and by that I mean you get the exact tone of the shadows and of the light tones of the face right. You have to figure out where the lightest areas of the face are. In this case, it is her cheek and a little bit of her forehead. Everything else is darker, and some areas are the darkest. For example, the shadow at her right eye and behind the nose. Try to compare every area with each other and see if you can detect which area is lighter than the other. By paying attention to the color values rather than the likeness, your outcome will look more realistically. Step 4. Fill out the rest of the painting with loose brush strokes. In this portrait, I want her face to be the focal point, so everything else is not as important as the face. So I choose to fill out everything else with loose brush strokes to give a dynamic feeling and to preserve the focal point. Also, what I did is that I want to have some of the first layers shine through and be preserved from the next layers, so I paid attention to nice looking brush strokes. This also takes practice, and for beginners I would suggest that if something looks good, even if it was an accidental brush stroke, just let it be and don't touch it again in the next layers. Step 5. Finish all skin. This is the most important and the most difficult step of all, but it is also the most satisfying one. Start with the step when everything is dried. If you've used enough LIQUIN, you can start 1 or 2 days after your first session of painting. In this step, you start at the most important and difficult area. For example, around her eyes or the area around the nose, and concentrate on getting all the values right. For this area, I use my thin watercolor brushes and start at where all details meet, for example at her nostril. And then I work my way slowly around it to the less difficult areas like her cheeks or her forehead, and all the time I use the right size of the brush. So for larger areas I use a larger brush. This not only makes it easier to fill out an area quickly, it also guarantees that you have an equal distribution of paint. Whereas if you would use a small brush, your color values would flicker all the time and your area wouldn't have one vibrant color. After I finished the skin, I continued on painting her hand with the same structure. I begin in the darker areas and the places where all the details meet, like her fingers, and then work my way around it until I fill out her arm. Also, because the arm is at the edge of the painting, I don't want to have it worked out detailed, so I just use a light brush and place just one loose brush stroke for the highlight of her arm. This step is the most difficult one and it takes practice, so don't give up. The more you practice, you better will get at it. Step 6. Elaborate the background so that you can place objects over it, like hair and clothes, and get nice edges. I do this because I want to have a realistic illusion and I don't want to go in the background and go in the figure again, and then I want to correct something, this would be too frustrating. So what I do is that I first paint the background perfectly, and in this case I want to have it rather blurry and a little bit more impressionistic. And after that I place the hair over it, and I don't have to touch the background again. And now the final step, step 7. Now complete all remaining parts and all details. And in this step you just fill out everything, but don't paint over every part, only over those parts that you think need to be painted over. If something looks already good, let it be. Sometimes the first layer looks better than the following layers. And that is what I did with her dress and also with some parts of her hair. In this layer you can also add little details like highlights and hair strings, and because you have already painted the background, you can just place tiny hair strings over the background without worrying that you have to paint over the background again. And if you are not happy with the face yet, in the second layer you will probably have to wait until it is dried and paint another layer on the face. With this painting I managed it to finish the face in 2 layers, but this takes practice. Don't worry if you don't succeed in doing it, because this is really a thing of practice and this comes after time. So these were my 7 steps, roughly explained, to make a portrait. Of course, there's always more behind it, and every step can have an own video or 10 videos of its own, where I could explain my technique in detail and just show you more tricks and tips how to do it. And actually I of course have those videos available on my Patreon page, where I have, for example, videos about blending technique, about which skin colors I use, which materials I use. So if you're interested in that, head over there and pledge the $5 reward here. But I hope this tutorial just showed you that there is a certain way where you can finish a painting after a plan. And this plan works really well, and I do it myself all the time, especially when I have to paint for gallery shows and I need to plan my paintings so that they are finished in time. And I think this was a fun video just to sum up how to paint a portrait super fast and hopefully easy to understand. I hope you liked it, and if you do so, please don't forget to give my video a thumbs up, and it would be amazing if you would also subscribe to my channel. The painting is for the Beauty and the Beast auction at the Bad Apple Artist Collective on Facebook, and there is an auction every month to a specific theme, and for this theme I thought, what would be better than a seductive girl with wolf's ears? So is she the beauty or the beast? This is the question, and of course you know it, she might be a little beastie. And if you like to purchase this painting or participate in the auction, there is a link in the description which leads you to the Bad Apple Artist Collective. And the auction starts at February the 25th and it ends at February the 28th at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. This is 11 p.m. in Germany. There's also a limited edition of 20 fine art prints of her in my online shop. I hope you have a great painting day and you are inspired to try out these techniques on your own. And I hope to see you soon. Bye bye! I thought she could also be a wolf disguised as a shepherdess.